in this space without lifting up the name of our mentor. And what I believe was the last remnant of the legacy of the Honorable Coleman Alexander Young. I have to say the name. It's none other than the Honorable Dr. Reverend Joanne Watson. Now I'm going to be quick because I know that there are others that are going to speak, but I want to try to cover a lot very quickly. 11 months ago, well, let me take you back a little further. In 2014, around March, our sister Charity Hicks was arrested for just telling her neighbors that they had a right to water and that they were in jeopardy of losing that right very quickly. She was assaulted by a contractor under the control of Hamrick, which we pay over $5 million a year to shut our water off instead of turn it on. After Charity was assaulted, she was incarcerated. Not in the Detroit jail, she was incarcerated in Mound Prison. Mound Prison, if you don't know, is Guantanamo Bay, right in the middle of Detroit. After several hours and several days of struggle and people being called together to caucus, our legendary attorney figure, Alice Jennings, along with Bill Weiler-Kellerman, who's to my left, went to seek her release. They struggled, but they were able to get her release, and what Charity told us was horrific. I'll never forget the wording, the phrasing, the emotions. But even after sharing all of that, she said, we must wage love. And then it was shortly after that, a few weeks later, that she was assassinated, and then 30 days later, she died. Well, an attempted assassination, but she did die. Charity being arrested sent shockwaves through our organization because the heads of our organization are all black women over the age of 50. And I don't know about you, but I know as a black woman living in America, I've been under assault so many times, and nobody has come to my rescue but black women. Black men, we love you, but many times you're absent. Many times you're AWOL when the struggles that we're in are convenient. And that doesn't mean that you're not amazing and you're not loved. But a lot of times it's just us sitting in the courthouse. It's just us at the schoolhouse. And what I saw with this water struggle is many times it was just us trying to get the water out or trying to find the relief for our people. But when Charity was assaulted, what it said to us is that any of us at any given time could be removed, incarcerated, mistreated, denied our constitutional protections, and whenever they choose to, they could kill us. And so we decided we don't take things like that laying down. We're just not made like that. We are the children of the Honorable Coleman Alexander Young. We are the children of Irma Henderson and all the great revolutionary shoulders we stand on. So we don't see ourselves as less than, we see ourselves as the greater than. And we operate in that mindset. So when we looked at this situation, and especially after they stole our grandparents' and our great-grandparents' pensions, it became very, very personal. But then when they shut us and our children off from access to water, then that became an attack on my future and my hope. And if I don't have hope, I have nothing. So I decided at that point to caucus with the ladies. And what are we going to do? Well, one of the things that Judge Rhodes told us is that he didn't care that people were going to die. And he didn't care that people would be sick. And he didn't care that you paid for it. That his interest lied in big business. And he wanted to make sure that Illich and Duggan and Mr. Gilbert could frolic in the water. And he wanted to make sure that all the gentrifiers that were coming into the city, that they could actually benefit from the water. But at the same time, he wanted to deny us water. And so we caucused and we gathered with some of our babies, and I can tell you, we've got some of the greatest minds in the country working on this thing. And I can tell you that they are committed to this thing. So our future is bright, y'all. I don't care what they say. Our future is bright because our children are beloved. And not just loved, they're dearly loved. And so they began to help us orchestrate a mapping, survey, water testing, storytelling, mapping project. We have gathered together 21 of the greatest individuals committed to this kind of work because they come from all of the universities that they tout as great. We have representatives from Wayne State, University of Michigan Dearborn, University of Michigan at Ann Arbor, Oakland University. There are actually 8 universities working on this project. 2 of them are outside the state because what we found out very quickly, any of the information that we gathered, the governor could seize it. Yes. So in our creativity, we allowed all of the data, the raw data, to be gathered outside the state. Okay. So the only thing that's being done is we are specifically targeting certain intellectuals to analyze the data. So nobody in the state has all the data except we, the people of Detroit. The first map, if you'll go to the left of me. Yeah. This is a map that actually displays the implementation of emergency management all across the state of Michigan. If you look at the map closely, there is a listing of every city that has been under some form of either emergency management, consent agreements, or a financial oversight. If you look at the purple dots, where there's a high concentration of the purple dots, those represent 25 people of color, black folks. From Benton Harbor to Muskegon Heights, Pontiac, Flint, Detroit, and the list goes on and on. As someone spoke to earlier, over 52% of the African American population in the state of Michigan has been and is under some form of this oppressive reptilian law called emergency management. Can you go to the next slide, please? The next slide shows a concentration of what has happened in just around Detroit. Can you go to the next slide, please? This slide here actually demonstrates the water system of the city of Detroit. See, nobody gave us anything. If you look back to 1977, our water system has been under either federal control and oversight or an emergency manager since 1977. Now, I don't know who has a relationship with the previous Judge Fikens, but Judge Fikens was a criminal. Judge Fikens operated outside the scope of his legal responsibilities. And everywhere you see a black line running, other than that blue concentrated area, which is Detroit, that is the infrastructure that we were bonded, and we are indebted, and we paid for, and we extended out of our benevolence to all of these suburban communities that are now benefiting from our labor and our sacrifice. If you look up at the top part of that map, that's where Flint is. Now I'm going to quickly go through some things so you'll understand that we are not conspiracy theorists, these are facts. Veolia, which is an international corporation that is skilled at privatizing water around the world. Veolia is the same company that they have here in the city of Detroit, actually privatizing the internal operations of the DWSD. While at the same time, they have been in Flint, encouraging Flint to not only get off the water system of the city of Detroit, but also encouraging Flint to drink the water from the river. Veolia also is directly connected to Kevin Orr because Jones Day is the law firm for Veolia and of Kevin Orr. Jones Day is also connected to the Detroit News and the Free Press. Veolia is a part of the privatization of one of the busing companies for the city of Detroit. Veolia also has its hands in the M1 rail project. Jones Day is not the city of Detroit. Jones Day is the second largest law firm in the world. When you begin to connect the dots of Jones Day and begin to connect the dots of the contrived bankrupting of the city of Detroit, what you will find is many of the banks that Jones Day and Kevin Orr protected are the same banks that are proceeding to go around the world and buy up the water tables and the aquifers. Do you still think it's an accident that your water's shut off in Detroit and the water's poisoned in Flint? Do you still think it's an accident that Veolia, who has been perceived as the worst water managing entity in the world, somehow they see fit for them to advise on the water here in the city of Detroit and the water in Flint? You also can't leave out the fact that all across this state, anywhere where water is adjacent to land and black folks own that land, it's been seized and taken. That's why Benton Harbor is under emergency management, and that's why Reverend Pinckney sits in prison right now as a political prisoner, because he dared to resist the tyranny of emergency management. The other thing that you've got to connect with this water work is the Koch brothers. David Koch sits on the board of the American Water Workers Association. Who sits on the board of Veolia? DeVos. As you connect all of these dots, I know people have convinced you it's all in your mind, that it's all just a conspiracy. But what I found out is that when there's been a highly orchestrated plan of evil, it wasn't an accident, and it's definitely not just in my mind. The next slide, please. Now this one here is key, because what it shows you is that it shows you that Detroit actually sells its water to all its suburban customers wholesale, and we pay for water retail. Over the last 10 years, our water has been marked up as much as 128%. But if you look at all the different municipalities that are listed there, and I know you may not be able to see them, the first one is Berkeley. The black line is what they mark it up. Woo! The markups are not happening by Detroit, they're happening by their own municipalities. The second one is Beverly Hills. The next one is Birmingham, Lathrop Village, Royal Oak, Southfield, Hazel Park, Troy. That last blue line, that's Detroit. So what they've used is the racial divisiveness all across the state of how Detroit has always been in the crosshairs of anything that they've decided is unworthy, or anything that they want to label and marginalize as criminal and worthless. It's not us that are marking them up. But if you call any of these municipalities and ask about the water rates, they will infer, it's not us. You're experiencing this gouging that's coming from them. You know how they are. And so they're feeding this divide, and thank God for what Mr. Barrow said about us coming together, because without our white allies actually being willing to go out to the suburbs and teach on these issues, we would not have what we've been able to garner over the last 2 years in terms of a pushback. Can you go to the next slide, please? This slide is going to show you the markups. Anywhere where there's a large dot, that's 1,000% markup. Anywhere where there's a small dot, there's 100% markup. But every one of those municipalities do a range of 100 to 1,000% markup on our water. The next slide, please. This slide here, the purple dots, they show and evidence communities that actually have a water shutoff policy. And if we're clear on our geography, the most aggressive water shutoff policies in Michigan are concentrated in Detroit and in Flint. Are you still feeling like this is not racially motivated? Yeah, absolutely. Can you go to the next slide, please? This slide And one of the babies was so brilliant to put this together. This actually, if you begin to the left of the slide, my left, the first wave is from 2012. And that low blue line is somewhere around the 3,000 shutoffs. But as you see us marching closer to bankruptcy, then the green starts to be the acceleration of water shutoffs. This is where we start seeing water shutoffs to the tune of about 1,000 a week. Where you see the dip is where the bad, ferocious Miss Alice Jennings and about 127 attorneys filed against the bankruptcy. So that's when it dipped. When you see it accelerate again, is after the bankruptcy is over, then you start seeing about 3,000 shutoffs per week. Wow. When you see it dip the second time, it's because of the Net Roots March that took place with the National Nurses Union in downtown Detroit with over 2,000 people protesting. You see it go up again, and you see it go down again when the water workers of the People's Water Board and Michigan Welfare Rights and all the water workers brought in the United Nations. So what does that tell you is every time we resist, they've had to back down. Every time we resist, they've had to back up. Can you go to the next slide, please? This here I thought was important because sometimes people feel like the pensioners, I think Kevin Orr called us, what, fat, happy, and lazy? Well, over 80% of the bankruptcy rested on the backs of the pensioners. And of course, you can see the figures. Health care was hit at 50%. I've got pensioners that are now, were paying $125 a month, are now paying anywhere from $500 to thousands of dollars just to maintain their health care. You know, in terms of our seniors, anytime you take a hit, once you get older, your health is the main thing you spend your money on, other than your grandchildren. City retirees pension, $3.5 billion. The interest rate swaps. Now, one of the things we know about the bankruptcy is they creatively left the swaps out of the bankruptcy to weaken the water system, to prime it for regionalization and eventually privatization. The reason that Flint was encouraged to get off of the Detroit water system was to be able to prime them to feed into the KWA system, which is also going to provide water to Bill Schuette and to Rick Snyder and several of the political elites' fracking businesses that are going to actually parallel the KWA. So it was never about saving the people of Flint money. It was always about making sure that the corporate elite were able to feed at the trough of working and poor people. The next slide, please. This here, I just want you to see it in very vivid colors. The discrepancies around that. The reason that the water rates are going up is because people didn't pay their bills. The reason that the system has to transfer from DWSD to the Great Lakes Water Authority is because people didn't pay their bills. Well, that's not the case. If you look at the interest rate swap situation, that deal was done similar to what the predatory lending practices were for homeowners. They did it to municipalities as well. And many of them were urban municipalities that were struggling being able to restructure their debt. So they knew that if you missed one payment, 20 years of interest was going to accrue in that one moment. That's what happened with the water. The next slide, please. This here just made me cry when we finally got all of this data inserted. The heaviest locations where you see the deep shaded purple, those are communities and parts of our city that have been foreclosed on directly related to water debt. Directly related to water debt. Don't you find it interesting that the only part of this map that has been immune to this atrocity has been downtown and midtown? So what that says to me is that they want all the rest of us to get out of town.
That's right.
This is a highly orchestrated strategy of gentrification. And they're not beyond genocide to get it. The next picture, please. The next. And this one's the last one, and I will wrap up and take my seat. Is that this one depicts the water debt that was attached to homes. On the left-hand side is the foreclosed properties in 2014 with delinquent water bills added to the property taxes by a total amount of water bills owed. And on the right is foreclosed properties in 2014 with delinquent water bills added to property taxes by percent of total taxes comprised by water bills. Guess what the average water bill debt was for homes that were foreclosed on?
$100.
$1,903. But guess what the average home sold for at auction? $13,438. So it was a very generous profit, while at the same time the people that became homeowners got property that was valued at and worth over $100,000. And so we the people of Detroit are continuing to expand on this. There's to date about 115 maps. We have commenced with the help of St. Pete's, DREM, and People's Water Board, and so many that work on water across the city. We have proceeded with moving forward with the next phase, which is phase 3, which will be spot water testing all across the city. We're not waiting on anybody to rescue us. We're not waiting on anybody to rescue us. And Ms. Clara McClinton in Flint says when they poison Flint, they poison the wrong ones. Well, see, we don't even want that to happen to us. So we are meeting with national groups like Sierra Club to look at collaboration around water and air quality. We will convene in April to complete the water testing. After the water testing, there will be a series of community meetings around the city, because this is not our research just to hold. We took this on as a labor of love because we love our people and we love our community, and we understand and we believe that we have a right to be. We have a right to be. And so that's what we're fighting for. We will convene young people from the end of spring throughout the summer to gather the anecdotal stories of many of the people, pensioners, school shutdowns, charter openings. Because it's not just the water that we've mapped. We've mapped the school openings. We've mapped the school closings, the charter openings. We've mapped the pension impact. And the next phase will be the health impact of all of this. And so I'm just hoping that many of you, as we come to your communities, if you're a block club captain, if you're willing to host a meeting, if you're willing to do what we call have a water party, where we bring this information and share it with you at the community level, we understand that collectively we are unstoppable.
Yeah.
Collectively we are unstoppable. And so in belovedness, we must save ourselves. In honor of all of this great history that we have in this city, our city will only be as great as we are and as we help our children to be. We owe it to our children to win this fight. And the last word I'll say is this: the legendary, the honorable Coleman Alexander Young said, if you find a good fight, get in it. Well, this is that fight.